live on Facebook, that would be fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic. Just a couple of seconds to make sure that it's starting, and then I will go on and introduce. I can see the live on here, but hopefully it's on Facebook as well.
Yes.
Is it working? Great. I think we're live, so I'm going to start now.
Yes, we are.
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another virtual town hall. Before getting started, I'm going to say just a couple of words about the event and about our guest, Minister Tang. This event is going to last approximately an hour. We have prepared some questions on our side that we're going to ask Minister Tang in the first 20 minutes or so of the event. But then we would like to open up the floor to any other questions that you might have. So please feel free to send them through the comments. We have Claudio, who's moderating the tech side, and he's going to pass all the questions to us. So we're going to try and answer as many questions as possible. As you know, we're live streaming the event on Facebook, and we're also going to share the recording later on YouTube so that everyone who was not able to attend can watch the event later. Today, we're going to discuss a very, very important topic. In recent months, countries across the world have cracked down on rights and liberties because of the coronavirus pandemic, or so to speak, to deal with the coronavirus pandemic. And we've seen that countries like China have given a final blow to democracy in countries like Hong Kong. As such, today, we would like to understand and discuss more about the use of digital democracy tools to advance the pro-democracy struggle, as it's now more important than ever. Throughout the event, we will discuss how people can best use technology to advance democracy, Taiwan's major advancement on digital democracy, and what the world can learn from it. I'm going to quickly introduce our guest, Minister Audrey Tang. Minister Audrey Tang is a software programmer. She served on Taiwan's National Development Council Open Data Committee, and she actively contributes to GovZero, which is a vibrant community that focuses on creating tools for civil society with the call to fork the government. She was amongst many young activists who occupied Taiwan Parliament in 2014 to protest against a trade deal secretly signed with China. And just 2 years later, in 2016, she became Taiwan's youngest ever government minister without a portfolio at the age of 35, if I'm right. And in that, she became also the world's first transgender member of a government. We're really, really excited to have you here, and it's such an honor. I'm going to quickly introduce myself before we start. For everyone who's watching us for the first time, my name is Lara, and I'm the campaign manager at Now. On the tech side, as I mentioned, we have our campaigner, Claudio, who's behind the Now logo, and will pass the questions through our chat. Without waiting any longer, I'm going to jump straight into the question. Again, it's such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hello, good local time, everyone.
So first thing first, and I think it's a very important question to give a bit of background for the international audience that is watching us now and who might not be aware of Taiwan's successes under your leadership in improving digital democracy. Could you please tell us a bit more about the major advances that Taiwan has achieved, and what is your work about?
Certainly. So democracy improves as more people participate. In Taiwan, democracy itself is a technology. There's a saying, anything that I'm born with is human nature. Anything introduced after I'm born is technology. And I was born in 81. At the time, Taiwan was still under the martial law. The first presidential election would come in 96 when I was already 15 years old and dropped out of junior high school. And so for me, democracy and internet grew together. It's the same bunch of people, same generation, our generation, that can further internet, the World Web, and governance, as well as democracy as a technology. And so digital, in our minds, remains one of the best ways to improve participation. And our focus is always on trusting the citizens from the government, and also finding common ground and rough consensus instead of anti-social social media. And so a few things, right? We have been like 4 months now with no locally confirmed cases in the COVID. When we fought COVID using the digital democracy principles, we never had a lockdown. There's been, I think, 7 deaths and about 400 or so confirmed cases. But throughout it, we actually made democracy grow deeper because we never had an emergency situation. All our administrative actions, including the digital fence and so on, the quarantine process and so on, built trust between people and the government. And also in the infodemic, which includes the disinformation, conspiracy theories, and panic buying and so on, we never resorted to administrative takedown either. So we remain, according to the Civicus Monitor, the Asia's most free society when it comes to the freedom of speech, assembly, and so on. But we still successfully countered the conspiracy theories and panic buying and so on. And so I think the twin triumph over the pandemic and the infodemic this year is a testimony to the civic technologies. And I just came back from a convenience store, which is just a minute's walk away, with 9 medical masks. And that I pre-order. It's just on the kiosk directly in the convenience store. And I have this map here that shows all my nearby pharmacies. The red ones are ones that do not have medical mask anymore. The green ones are the ones that do. And anyone can just go to a nearby pharmacy using this map and see the opening hours, the current stock number of adult and children's masks, and everybody can rely on people queuing before and after them, and the more than 100 or so civic technology visualizations and chatbots to keep the system honest. That is to say, if you're an adult, you can get 9 medical masks per 2 weeks, but once you do this procurement from the nearby pharmacy, people queuing before and after you can just refresh the map. And then they see actually number decrease within minutes. And because of that, if they see anything wrong with the system, instead of blinding trust the government, they will be able to do their own analysis on oversupply and undersupply and so on, and call 1922, which is a toll-free line with novel social innovation ideas. For example, back in April, there was a young boy who called 1922 saying that he doesn't want to go to school because when we ration mask, you don't get to pick color, and all he had was pink. And so he said that he might be bullied by his colleagues, that is his classmate, because he's really young, and I think that pink is not the color for boys. And the very next day, all the CECC Central Epidemic Command Center medical officers start wearing pink medical mask in a gender mainstreaming kind of way. And suddenly the boy became the most hip boy because only he had a color of the mask that the heroes wear. And so throughout this way of social innovation, we made sure that all the good ideas that came from the society gets amplified by the daily live stream CECC press conference, and it builds mutual trust between the civil society groups and also from the government to the civil society, so that everybody is in this together.
Thank you so much for your answer. You covered a lot of points that I'm really interested about. And one thing that you said at the beginning, and I find it really fascinating, it's the way that you work with fake news. And I've seen a lot of article about the idea of humor over rumor. Right. And I think it's a great idea. And I was wondering if you could tell us more, and if you think that more countries will be able to follow this example.
Oh yeah, definitely. So our observation, very simply put, is that most of the conspiracy theories travels on outrage, and outrage is a very viral feeling on the social media. Specifically, the outrage that people share. And would you like to bring my slides? I just share some slides. Okay, right. So yeah, that's what you quoted, humor over rumor. That's our counter disinformation strategy. And because this really is stressful time, people do feel anxious, a lot of panic buying, a lot of conspiracy theories. And humor over rumor simply means that if there a rumor that travels on outrage have a R0 value of maybe 3, that is to say every hour, each person on average share to 3 other people on social media, it will very quickly turn it into a disinformation, what we call epistemic crisis. And so our work is very simply that within 2 hours after each trending rumor, instead of issuing any takedown orders, our premier, Su Zhenchang, you see smiling happily here, because we started working with convenience store to ration the mask. Now he would then push out a internet meme within a couple hours. So one example, there was a conspiracy theory that says that because we're ramping up facial mask production from 2 million a day to 20 million a day, that the conspiracy theory says, quote, it's the same material as tissue paper, so soon we will run out of tissue papers, unquote. And so people just share it and rush down and buy tissue papers. And so the same premier, smiling on the previous slide, pushes this out, and you can see very clearly his backside, his bottom actually, wiggling it a little bit, and saying in very large print that each of us only have 1 pair of Botox. It's a wordplay because in Mandarin, Botox, 囤 is homonym to stockpile, 囤, and so it means that the stockpiling doesn't work, and so you can only use so much tissue papers. And then this table that says the tissue paper actually came from South American material, and the PP, that is to say the medical mask material, is domestic. So increasing one production doesn't hurt the other. And so this went absolutely viral, maybe have an R value of 5 or 7. And so when people laughed about it, as you just did, people can feel much more calm about this issue, and they will be able to deliberate factually, because once you laughed about something, literally you are not capable of also feeling outrage about that thing. So this is not propaganda, right? This is just get people into the mood that people can talk about factual things. And it's not a one-shot thing. This is literally daily. In each of our ministries, we have a participation officer team that engages the public. So like parliamentary officers that talk to MPs, or journalists that interfaces with media officers. The participation officers interact with internet memes and hashtags. And the Ministry of Health and Welfare's internet participation officer lives with this dog called Zongchai, the spokes dog of the CECC. So when we introduce a physical distancing, we'll push out this internet meme that says, if you're indoor, please keep 3 dogs away from one another. If you're outdoor, please keep 2 dogs away. Remember to cover your mouth and nose when sneezing. Literally, the participation officer just went home and take some new photos without paying Shutterstock or anything like that. And remember to pre-order your mask, because what's mask good for? Masks are protecting you from your own unwashed hands. So use soap to wash your hands. Don't do what the dog does. And so all of the, you just laughed, right? So literally this is joyful. And this is how we ensure that people still feel calm and collected, even during the pandemic, and making sure that the clarification of the science spreads faster than the conspiracy theory. So that's humor over rumor.
Yeah, that's I think it's such a great idea, and I think that it kind of impersonates very well what I saw that you mentioned in a few articles about you and your position feeling as the language between civil society and the government. And I think that you can see in the approach that you bring in, fighting things like fake news or, conspiracy theory. So I think it's a great idea. And I think that people are much more willing to see something about a dog than kind of like sad news about the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. The cute dog is the most viral when it comes to online media, except maybe cute cats.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing that you touch upon in your previous answer was about how Taiwan has been able to deal with the pandemic. And as we know, Taiwan has been at the forefront of battling the pandemic. You have even created an app to help citizens during the time of this awful pandemic.
Yeah.
But the WHO has barred Taiwan from attending. because of China's pressure, despite the fact that it would have been of huge assistance to many other countries during this pandemic. So my question here is, what do you think the international community should do and can do to counter China's pressure on this matter, but also on other matters that we will discuss later on?
Well, so actually, the staff of the Chief of Health of the United States, the Secretary of Health and Human Service, Alex Azar's team is in Taiwan as we speak, and Alex Azar will actually visit Taiwan very soon. And so I think it's a ministerial level visit, and we'll have a minister to minister level conversation about the Taiwan model, as we say. And even for people who are not able to travel that much, we have this 14 economies WHA pre-meeting, which takes place a few days before the World Health Assembly. And again, it's hosted by Taiwan, and we met with a lot of very senior medical officers around the world. And I think really, there really is nothing in the Taiwan model that says that you have to subscribe to exactly what we do. This is more like a way of thinking, basically trusting the citizens radically and making sure that social innovation gets amplified and that you communicate the use case of mask really well by billing it as something that protects oneself from one's own hands, as well as the mask distribution, that's like a physical vaccine, and many other things like the digital fence, which is a quarantine method that uses phones, but it only uses cell phone towers signal strength, and that can be already deployed in many jurisdictions that already have like early flood warning or early earthquake warning, because it's literally the same system and so on. So yeah, I think there's no kind of official multilateral like 500 membership thing, like including 100 from the various countries, 100 from medical staff, 100 from academia, and things like nothing like the WHO. But Taiwan has been able to do epicenter to epicenter diplomacy quite successfully and work directly with several epicenters to work through the Taiwan model. And you can learn more at taiwancanhelp.us or on my Twitter. But I think we're currently facing no real resistance when it comes to sharing the Taiwan model to our world, because this is open innovation after all.
Thank you very much. And one question, if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask this question that I saw in the comments, which I think it's really interesting.
Sure.
And it's about how can we ensure that e-democracies are fully inclusive and do not alienate those that are unable to navigate in digital platforms. And I think this is going to lead us quite well at the second question that I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, when I say AI, I always mean assistive intelligence, meaning that digital technologies are there to help the society rather than replacing part of the functions of the society. And so actually, I just came back from the Social Innovation Lab, which is my office. And I think if you can share my screen again, this is something that I would really, like me to if you would like me to answer this question, some visuals may really help. So this really is my office. It's a park. We tore down the walls, so anyone can just join in. And the public art here is by people with Down syndrome, with trisomy differences, so that they see the world through the lens of topology. And people stepping into this place become very creative. And so like every Wednesday, that's today, anyone can just step in the park and bring any of their social innovations to me. It could be self-driving tricycles. It could be really anything. And then we figure out a way for the people to interact with these emerging technologies and co-create how they want these technologies to be integrated into the society without forcing anything on people. So for example, these are maybe good as shopping carts in the nearby flower market. And so we'll just tinker with these open innovation tools to become the shopping carts that follows you around, for example. And so this norm first digital consensus building is in SDG terms a concentration on effective partnerships rather than on linear partnerships. And so every other week or so, I also tour around Taiwan to the most rural places, remote islands, and so on, and talk to the local elders, including the elderly and the indigenous elders, sometimes with indigenous cultural translators. And when I go there, I always spend at least half a day, sometimes a night or two, on a ethnographic hanging out with the elders, so that for them it's just another town hall, but they can just speak their mind. But I bring with me through telepresence the 12 ministries joining in the social innovation plan, so that everybody can just talk, but the people in the municipalities will listen to their full story rather than as an abstraction. And we always keep the entire transcript published online so that people don't have to refer to heavily condensed down abstraction, but they can kind of just put on a VR glass or go back to the transcript and feel the entire contextual conversation again. And so this is how we make sure that the social innovations are labeled according to the Sustainable Development Goals, and that the people's innovations on the ground, for example, people caring about the air quality, measuring their own PM 2.5 values on a distributed ledger, can then negotiate very successfully with our environment minister. Each number you see here is done by the people, not by the government. And so we can just figure out the ways, for example, on filling those gaps in the industrial areas, because we own the lamp. But the micro weather sensor, the weather stations, is done by the civil society, hosted by the civil society, and the public sector only ensures that the places where the civil society can't go, we will nevertheless adopt the design. And so that's sustainable development for global citizenship. So the idea is that the government, instead of responding only every year on a budget cycle or every 4 years on a voting cycle, we will respond literally every week, iterate every week based on the real-time feedback. And for the people, they don't have to learn to use a keyboard or a mouse or anything. For them, it's just another town hall. It's just amplified by digital technology.
Thank you. I think this brings us quite well to a question that I want to ask, because for those of you following us from home, we have a campaign going on at the moment focusing on Hong Kong and Hong Kong fight for democracy. So I think that this is such an important topic for those countries that are struggling to ensure that their civil rights and liberties are protected. So one question that I would like to ask you is, with this ongoing protest in Hong Kong and with demonstrations going on, do you see ways for Hong Kong activists to use those digital democracies tools to advance their pro-democracy struggles?
Well, in many cases, we are learning from them, right? The Be-Water multi-centered LIHKG-based model, the Liandeng model, is what we are learning from. So in a sense, the Hong Kong people are our teachers. But we understand, of course, after the National Security Act, that we need to double down on using also institutionalized method to give Hong Kong citizens the most practical support and assistance. So we launched from July 1st, the Taiwan-Hong Kong Office for Exchange and Services. And our government will continue to run that office, making sure that we have the sufficient budget and funds integrating the civic resources, and so that we can provide the people of Hong Kong with the necessary both humanitarian assistance and also a safe space to voice their sound to. For example, we hosted the Oslo Freedom Forum, various like Reporter Without Borders, a lot of events from the Hong Kong people, and independent bookstores migrated to Taiwan. And so, yeah, just as when Taiwan was first democratized in the late 80s and early 90s, the people in Hong Kong, especially the journalism community, offered a lot of help for the Taiwan democratization process. Now we're returning the favor.
Great. Thank you very much. I asked because I also saw a question from an Hong Konger living overseas. So I know that this is a topic that it's of interest to many people. One final question, two final questions on my side before we jump on the audience. The first one is, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing Taiwan's democracy at the moment? And also, if you'd like to comment on the biggest challenges of democracies around the world.
Yeah, certainly. So, of course, the pro-social media, anti-social media question is a large one. Because when people go online, it's both easier to amplify outrage as it is to amplify joy. And in Taiwan, we worked with the social media companies, the multinational companies, always with a plan B, because like LIHKG, we have PTT, which is a locally not-for-profit National Taiwan University operated forum for public discourse. But we also realized that many people work with, for example, Facebook or YouTube or Twitter and so on, in a way that use hyper-precision targeting, the so-called dark patterns, especially between the beginning of the election campaign to the presidential inauguration. There's a rampant use of hyper-precise ways to target people to deliver misinformation. And so I would like to share our way to counter that. And it involves a lot of innovation, really, because we cannot take down anything. So we are forced to innovate in a way that doesn't hurt the civil society. So just to make sure that we have our presentation up again,
yes,
if you will. Okay. Yeah. So are you seeing?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. Yeah, it takes some time.
Here.
Okay. Here we go. Right. So I talk about humor over rumor, and this is, of course, the basic. And another example being, there was a rumor that says perming your hair will be subject to $1 million fine. And within a couple hours, the premier said, it's not true. I may be bald now, but I will not punish people who look like my youth. And that's his young photo. And then a small print that says, labeling requirement for hair products is what we've introduced. It's not punishing people who perm your hair. And it only takes effect on July 2021. And a now older premier says, however, if you perm your hair many times a week, it will not damage your pocket, but it will damage your hair. And just look at me for what will happen to you. And so again, it's like factual clarification, but packaged in a way that's mimetic and that just looks like a hair salon. And so I'm using this example to show that humor over rumor is actually a lot of effort. There's like professional comedians and hashtag officers in each of our people-facing ministries. But there are also things that are more insidious. For example, the Taiwan Fact Check Center regularly unveils like disinformation. For example, because you asked about Hong Kong, there was a disinformation just before our presidential election that says, quote, Hong Kong thugs compensation exposed, killing a police earns you 20 million, unquote. It's a very serious accusation. And the picture is actually a Reuters photo. But the Reuters caption says nothing about killing police or anything like that. It just says there are young people, teenage people participating in the anti-ELAP protest. However, the version that circulates on the Taiwanese social media says that the 13-year-old bought new iPhones and he's recruiting his brother, reusing the same photo. And so instead of taking it down, we really need to work with the multinational social media companies to make sure that we adopt the idea of attribution, that is to say notice and public notice. Once people notice it and flag it as a disinformation, instead of flagging it and take it down, we flag it and put a frame across anyone who shared this on social media. And that says this is sponsored by the 中央政法委长安监, the central political and law unit of the Chinese Communist Party in the PRC, because literally they are the first Weibo account to post this. I'm sure copyright infringement as well, but this information. And so even though that we don't take anything down, we make sure that people are aware, are competent in looking at the attribution and put into a public notice that this is actually sponsored by 中央政法委长安监, by the Chang'an Sword, and then people can draw their own conclusions. And I think this is much more educational in a pedagogy sense compared to taking down anything. There was also a disinformation about the voting process itself that says the CIA made 2 special invisible ink for ballots. No matter how you vote, the Tsai ink will appear and the other 2 candidates will disappear. And we solved this disinformation again by radical transparency. Our entire counting process could be recorded. There's any number of YouTubers in the counting stations. So we take out each paper ballot, show it to all the counters and the YouTubers, and they have their own app to tally. And so this become kind of a social ceremony. And so any conspiracy theory about invisible ink just disappear because people can see for themselves how the counting process works. So again, combating disinformation by radical transparency. And we need to keep negotiating. This is another one that about the scam that purpose to send people masks, but rather sends phishing emails. And this is of course countered by the social innovation of the real-time mask map. But the whole point here is a norm first conversation that, for example, during the election, we need to ban foreign sponsored propaganda, that the campaign donation and finance need to be published and only coming from domestic sources. And even though we did not pass a law that forces the multinational social media companies to obey, we nevertheless have a very strong norm. So if they do not do that, they will face social sanction. So we just said, in our campaign donation and finance, we publish the raw data so the investigative journalists can draw their conclusions about political contributions. And Facebook advertisement back in 2018 did not. And we can see a lot of campaign finance actually disappear into the black box. That is the Facebook advertisement library. And so we negotiated them saying, you have to, just 2 choices, right? You either publish it as our radical transparency so that people who use dark patterns will be discovered immediately, or you can stop running political ads. And we understand there's no law that forces you to do so, but you may face social sanction. And so Facebook eventually relented and published the ads library in real time. And Google and Twitter simply refused to run political advertisement that it allows hyper-precision targeting during our elections. So that's norm shaping for you.
That's really super interesting. And as you said, you can see the amount of work and time that it goes behind, fighting fake news and conspiracy theory. But I think it kind of like it shows the difference between what Taiwan is doing and what other countries should be doing. I'm going to take a few questions from the audience now because I see that there's a lot of interest on this topic in particular. And I'm going to start with a question from Joseph from Facebook, and I think it links quite well to what you just said now. And it's how to ensure that we have transparency of the E-Democracy system. How do we do that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So I think the principle of participatory accountability is very important, because you can have all the open API, all the open source saying that it's on GitHub or whatever, but only people with software knowledge will be able to verify. And even then, a sandbox system differs very much from a production system, so that even professional software engineers would not be able to truly prove its properties unless it's, of course, proof carrying code. But even then, you need professional mathematicians. And so, of course, we do all that. We do open by default. We make open API. We make sure that people can build their own front-end code and so on. We put that in our procurement rules. But even more importantly, imagine if in the mask map, if we refresh the API every day, then there will be no way for people to participate in the accountability. If they queue in line and if they purchase 9 medical masks, but the pharmacist actually report 18 is sold and they keep the other 9, there really is no way for people to notice. And then the trust will decimate, like literally reduced by 10% if we keep doing that. However, this real-time API ensures that anyone queuing in line can hold each other and the pharmacies to account. and therefore increase trust without the government having to prove anything, because people can just iterate very quickly. And that is, I think, the key. That is why, for example, the air pollution measurement that I just showed, water pollution measurement and things like that, as long as there's a significant chunk of the data production that rests in the social sector, that is to say, the academics and the people in the civil society organizations, people will be then able to verify by joining the data production. And unless people join the data production, really there is no way for people to verify that the data is indeed correct, because they would not have access to the producer's mentality. So that's why in our K-12 curriculum, we no longer teach media literacy or digital literacy. We now teach media competence and digital data competence, meaning that people who are young, they may have actually more Instagram followers than I do, right? So they are media producers, and we need to educate them, for example, in the crowdsourced fact-checking of all the presidential platforms and debates in real time, which attracts thousands of people alongside professional journalists, so that people can attend the journalists' kind of part-time lessons as interns, or like the daily CCC press conference where they answer the 1922 toll-free numbers question, including the pink medical mask, so that everybody become kind of amateur epidemiologist, amateur journalist, amateur data producer after mingling a while into this participatory accountability framework. And only when people understand the science behind it can people actually see the true transparency rather than just glozing it over.
Thank you. I think this was also a question that we received on social media about the importance of transparency. And another question that I see here, and I think it's really interesting, by Philippa, is how did Taiwan civil society become so strong? And I think that you do, as you said, you are the language between the civil society and the government, but you also come from a bit of an activist past. So how do you think that Taiwan has ensured that its civil society has become so strong?
Well, I think there's two reasons. First, as I mentioned in the very beginning, in Taiwan, democracy itself is very new. It's a technology. Our constitution have been amended 6 times, and we're contemplating another one. And so even constitution itself is seen as technology. I mean, it's like an operating system kernel. Of course, it's very important to get it right, but still it's technology, it's code, it's like legal code that people can code. That is to say, to change, to make suggestions and amendments. And so because it's so new to each one of us, there's no hundreds of years of proud tradition to keep. And so that opens up the civil society's imagination landscape. So that's the first thing. It's that the counter expertise on the civil society and the expertise in the administration, I mean, is equally new to them. So it's much more room to collaborate rather than one side just holding all the institutional knowledge. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that the Sunflower Occupy, I think, really play a very large role. Prior to the Occupy in 2014, each CSO, civil society organization, care maybe about a particular aspect, like about the human right, about fair trade, about environment protection, labor conditions, and so on. But there's no kind of, generally speaking, a kind of part-time, as I said, amateur activist mentality, especially in the younger population. And so the Occupy, however, because 500,000 people went on the street and many more online, and it was so peaceful during the Occupy on the Parliament area, so that people just hopped from one CSO to another, each one deliberating a different aspect of the cross-strait service and trade agreement at the time being rushed through the parliament, and the Occupy put a stop to it. But the demonstration is not a protest only, it's a demo, as in that if the CSOs each deliberating about one particular aspect throughout the 3 weeks, gradually people come to consensus. For example, there was one aspect that says whether we need to allow the PRC components in our then new 4G core infrastructure. That's the clean path deliberation. And then people generally agree on the street that there is no private sector companies in the PRC. When the time comes and when it's needed, the Dang, the party, can use their party branches to replace leadership in private sector companies anytime they want. So we just spawned PRC components in our 4G telecom infrastructure, and now I'm using this 5G phone. So I'm enjoying the fruit of that deliberation 6 years ago. But we are now seeing that many jurisdictions are now doing the same deliberation as we did 6 years ago. So because it was a successful experience, ever since then, all the mayors that supported open governments gets elected sometime without a inauguration speech at the end of 2014, and the mayors that did not support it did not get elected. And so that's one of very rare, like all the 4 major parties in the parliament agree on the open government principles. And when all the parties agree, then it's like a ratchet. Each administration can only push open government forward. They cannot back down from it because there's always an outside game. And that further opens up the possibility of co-governance with the civil society.
Yeah, I think it's such I watched one of your interviews in the past, and you emphasized the idea of being demonstration rather than protest. And I think, again, even just the language is very important to highlight what activists and young people and the society is trying to do for a country. Jumping on here, we've, as you just mentioned about the Sunflower protest in Hong Kong, we had the Umbrella Revolution in 2014. What do you think the turning point between the development of democracy is in Hong Kong and Taiwan? And this is again,
we are at the turning point. This is exactly where we are now, with a exclamation mark. Right, because really everybody around the world is now looking at like the literally the front line, where the authoritarian norm is trying to expand its reach in Hong Kong, and the democratic norm, specifically the norm that counters the pandemic with no lockdown and counter the infodemic with no takedown, is being firmly built in Taiwan with a over 90% approval rate of our CECC counter coronavirus strategy by the Taiwanese population. So the Taiwan model has a very high legitimacy at this moment, not only in Taiwan, but pretty much everywhere in the free world. And at the same moment, the Hong Kong people are being threatened by the expansion of the PRC's reach. And so I think we are at this turning point, and anything that we do now will have a very amplified repercussion that is felt everywhere else in the world, much as the anti-ELA protest and the Liandeng model inspire already people in Europe when they specifically said that we need also to be water when they demonstrate. I think the collaboration between the people for democracy, including now exclamation mark, will be felt around the world whenever the authoritarian norm try to make another move anywhere else in the world.
Thank you. I think it's such a good, really great answer, because I think that especially a lot of the time in the news, the attention shifts away from what's happening in Hong Kong and what could happen in many other cities, in many other countries. And I think that it's important to, as you said, remember and keep in mind what the aim is, and the fact that we're building something, and then the international community can help people in Hong Kong in building their future and protecting their future. One question that we received on Instagram early on today was this one, and it's from Jimena. What do you think about the government's use of technology to control its citizens, and whether as citizen or we can do something, and how the government can improve on this?
Mm-hmm, yeah. So there's a saying that I often say that in democratic Taiwan, ministers trust you. And that means that we always think that the government should trust the citizens, but the citizens may or may not trust back, depending on how the government is doing. And we need to make the government transparent to the citizens, but not making the citizens transparent to the government. And so these are the basic directions that defines the Taiwanese democracy. And so when the government tries to, quote unquote, control its citizens, the control itself need to be kept in check by a accountable framework that allows direct participation. So for example, the voting ballot process, we use paper ballot. We do not, generally speaking, when voting for people, have absentee voting. And this is, in a sense, control, because you cannot freely move while you vote. You actually have to go back to your region to vote. But that is to enable the civil society oversight. That's to enable the YouTubers to broadcast whatever the counting process is. And when it went wrong, everybody sees very transparently that it went wrong. And so that builds trust. And so whereas people may say that the government is rigid in its election rules or things like that, we always respond, if you can come up with a way that's as transparent, as accountable as those YouTubers broadcasting counting events, then we're happy to be more flexible. But before we do that, we need to establish that there is a general oversight, that we do not exclude people who were able to participate in an accountable process before from the new accountability mechanism. And so maybe we will do e-collecting or even e-counting or things like that, where we do that on the national referenda. We do not do it generally at the moment on voting for people, because the referenda, they share the same topics, throughout the nation. But for voting for people, every mayoral candidate is different from one another on the ticket. So the re-identification risk is higher when voting for people and lower when voting for referenda. So there's this very simple philosophy here that if you are a private citizen and you have a better way, for example, to count or to collect or participate in the participatory budget or whatever, you can just build your own fork of the government. And that's the initial idea of G0, G0 v the TW. For each government services that they did not like, they just build a alternate version and change a O to a 0 on the domain name. So something that G0 v the TW instead of GOV the TW. And just by changing one letter into a digit on your browser, you get into the shadow government that is always more participatory, and it represents a new imagination of that particular public service. And then it's always relinquished the copyright. So when it gains social legitimacy, the government naturally will then, through kind of reverse procurement, merge it back. And we have already seen this idea spread to, for example, G0v.it, which is the Italian version of the same vision.
Yeah, we were discussing with Claudio, the behind the now logo, about this in Italy actually just a couple of weeks ago. So it's an example that we know ourselves. I saw a very good question, I think, from Joycey about how can Taiwan civil society continue to connect itself to the rest of the world in an age of deglobalization. And I think this is really important because, as we mentioned at the beginning, I strongly believe that Taiwan can be a great example for the world in a lot of things, from how you have fought the pandemic to how you interact with citizens, and citizens are part of, a real part of democracy. So how can we ensure that, we can continue to follow Taiwan's example?
So I think the answer is twofold. The first thing is that when we're sharing in the open innovation, open source landscape, there really is no difference between Taiwanese civil society versus, say, Korean or Japanese civil society, because everybody is just a GitHub account, right? And so in that sense, for example, the mask map that I just showed you, the one with a lot of triangles, I think this was introduced by Finjun Kiang in Tainan this February, but just a month after that, I think some Korean civic technologists showed this to their government, saying, if Taiwan can make sure that they data API every 30 seconds. Surely that we can do it too. And at that time, they were not yet rationing Musk because they were afraid that people will see it's hard to hold it to account. But the Taiwan model of the Musk rationing really inspired the Korean civic technologists. So they just take the same API and convince their government to implement the same on their rationing. And so the first map that worked on the Korean API is actually the Taiwanese map. And even though Fin Jianqiang did not speak Korean, he speaks JavaScript. And that's enough, right? And so that's how this open innovation spread. And when the Code for Japan, that's roughly equivalent to GovZero in Japan, did work with the Tokyo metropolitan government on the Stop COVID dashboard, we also worked on translation internationalization together. I personally changed like one character on that website, and Haluseki-san, the person that runs this project, tweeted it, and the city councilor retweeted it, and then the mayor of Tokyo tweeted it. So it may look like on Twitter a kind of track 1 diplomacy thing, but actually it's track 0 diplomacy, because I first sent a pull request as a open source contributor. I got my contribution merged in, not because I'm a digital minister, but rather the change made sense. And so in a sense, when we're encouraging open source collaboration, there really is no border on the GitHub or on the internet in general. So that's the first answer. And the second thing is that you're also welcome to come to Taiwan. There's many people during the pandemic that were originally on a tourist visa, and then they converted to a Taiwan Gold Card. You can learn more about it at taiwangoldcard.com and right on the spot. So they can stay for 3 years. There's no need to find a local employer. You just keep working with whatever you're working. And if you feel like, after a while, you can also become a dual citizen, that is to say, becoming also Taiwanese. And that's how we network with the general civil society. You don't have to be, a venture capitalist, or although we do welcome venture capitalists. If you have contributions, say, in education, human rights, in social work, and so on, all of these are eligible to the Gold Card and also the dual citizenship.
Thank you, and I really like what you said about the internet going across borders, because this is something that it's really important for us. And now when we look at problems and looking at issues that are global, that don't stop between borders, and I think that, as you were saying before we started the event, technology can be of huge help in ensuring that we're on all on the same page. We can all connect, and I think that it's most of the time it's a great instrument. I'm gonna ask just 2 final questions before we conclude the event, but I think they're both really, really interesting. The first one is from Claudio. E-democracy can be used to enhance participation and deliberation, like in Taiwan, or as an alternative tool to contestation. Think about the US and Hong Kong. How can we switch in those countries from contestation to deliberation?
That's a great question, and I can hold like a 3-day seminar on it, but we have maybe 3 minutes. So, okay, I'll be brief. And so I'm sharing with you the screen of the first ever AI assistive intelligence powered conversation in Taiwan, backed by the tool Polis. Which is now a tool that we use on the national government, so polis.gov.tw. And then it's a visualization at the time of an UberX question. That is to say, Uber at the time were operating in Taiwan with people who are drivers, but not professional drivers, in a way that they call car sharing or ride sharing, but they actually share a ride like 30 times a day. And so it created a large debate in the society. And of course, you can focus on the ideological part, like what's sharing economy, but then you would debate for a year without getting really anything done. But rather, we ask just a very simple question. How do you feel? How do you feel about UberX in Taiwan? And so this is the focused conversation method. You start with the objective, that is to say the facts. And then we ask the feelings. And for 3 or 4 weeks, we ask just the feelings. And that is starkly different from many other democracies where people just jump through the decision-making process all the way to ideation and then just decision, right? So pausing for a month or so to ask about people's feelings is very important, because then the best ideas are then the one that take care of most people's feelings. And around the same fact, you can feel happy, they can feel angry. It's all okay. There's no right or wrong about feelings. But the magic thing about asking about feelings, like in design thinking, is that it has a connector between the two diamonds. It can connect people's common values out of very different positions. So for example, I feel that I'm not protected by passenger liability insurance when I take UberX. I feel that having a liability insurance will protect me more. Now, you can agree with this feeling, and you can move then toward me a little bit. This is your avatar. Or you can disagree with me, in which case you will move maybe toward here a little bit or whatever, right? And then you can pass or unsure. But what's lacking here is a reply button, because we found that if you have a reply button, trolls will take control. But if you don't have a reply button, trolls will lose control. There will be no way for people to troll it because there is no reply button. So if you agree or disagree for a while, you will then be also prompted to share your own feelings for other people to resonate. And so in the reply-free environment, we always get this shape. And this is maybe the most important shape that I will share in today's talk. This basically says, if we agree to disagree on a few ideological statements, actually most people agree with most of their neighbors most of the time on most of the issues. It's just on social media and some institutional media, because of click rate or selling advertisement or whatever, people tend to over-focus on these ideologies. But if we achieve just a rough consensus, that's enough. Insurance, registration, taxation, that's what everybody broadly agree on when it comes to the Uber case. And then Uber is now operating as a legal taxi in Taiwan, Q taxi, but we changed the Taxi Act to allow for surge pricing and things like that. And so everybody wins. And so anytime we run a consultation like this, focused on people's feelings, confirming people that we are, after all, a polity, this is much more important than just getting one or two ideological ideas, getting 51% of voting, and then everybody feel they have lost as a polity. And so that is how you move from the division into deliberation, by allocating time for people's feelings to be checked, reflecting it to the people, setting it as agenda for the second diamond, that is to say the development and delivery.
Thank you for such a great answer, and I think as you were speaking, you kind of answered yourself a question that I wanted to ask you from the beginning, and that was how, from your activist past to becoming a minister, how was the move from a personal perspective? But I think that even just throughout this reasoning and throughout taking people's feelings into consideration, I think you answered the question, because a lot of time, coming not from a political background, to take into consideration much more, the people side, rather than perhaps like a government perspective. So thank you so much. We have one final question, and if you can answer in 1 minute, because I think this is a fantastic question. One example of Taiwan's digital democracy in protecting human rights.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will share this story about our presidential hackathon, but I'm afraid that this will be more than 1 minute. But assuming you don't have a hard stop, I don't have either.
No, neither.
Right. Okay. So presidential hackathon is an annual event where people just bring out new ideas that enables sustainable infrastructure, that is to say, correspond to any SDG goals. And every year, the president, Dr. Tsai Ing-wen, hands out 5 trophies. And each trophy looks like something like this, a shape of Taiwan, and a micro projector that when you turn it on, it says that whatever you did in the past 3 months as a data collaborative, it projects Dr. Tsai Ing-wen's image, handing the trophy to you, promising whatever you did in the past 3 months will become national policy in the next 12 months. So that's presidential executive branch power as a hackathon award, 5 awards per year. We've been running this for the 3rd year now. And so as you can see, we use a lot of novel techniques, such as quadratic voting, in determining the cases that we collaborate to build trilingual teams. That is to say, teams comprising of social sector, private sector, and public sector elements. And so all of this, of course, has to correspond to one or more sustainable development goals. But many people would not memorize all the SDGs. And if they get mobilized to vote, then they maybe just vote for one and leave the platform and leaving, nothing that is of value, because then it's just a contest between the two top mobilizers, right? So we implemented the quadratic voting method, which I think is key in making sure that so many human rights related teams becoming the top teams in presidential hackathon. As you can see, the promoting the rule of law, ensuring equal access to justice, that people who engage in, for example, unsafe driving and so on, can have a assistive intelligence AI explainer, so that people who keep clamoring for harder sentences or whatever, they can actually be met not with a press officer all the time, but actually looking into the trend and the factors of people engaging in unsafe driving, protecting these people from this undue adding of sentences, but rather innovating on ways, for example, the alcohol breathing lock or whatever, that will actually reduce unsafe driving. And so that's like shifting from revenge-based justice to like improving the society sort of justice, and many other human rights related things as well. But usually these, like this is from our judicial branch, these doesn't have that much mobilization power. So how did they get into the top 20? Well, the voting method is quadratic voting, where everybody has 99 points. And what by everybody, I mean anyone on our national participation platform, which has more than 10 million people using out of 23 million people in Taiwan. And so with 99 points, if you support, for example, this one about water blocks, measuring water pollution in the agri-climes, if you like it, you can vote one vote, which costs 1 point, or two votes, which costs you 4 points, three, which costs you 9, and up to 9, which costs you 81. But you can't vote 10 votes because everybody starts with only 99 points. And so people would have then 18 left. So they have to find something else, like using computer vision to reduce marine debris and marine pollution. And you maybe with 18 points left vote 4, and then that would cost you 16 and you still have 2 left. And then what to do, right? So people will be motivated to learn at least about 2 more things that they were not familiar with. And maybe they will look into, protecting the human right of people who engage in unsafe driving or so on, in a way that uses the older cases to make a reasonable explanation of the factors involved and so on. And if you read about it, maybe you'll be seeing that, it has synergy with other human rights-based projects. For example, ensuring public access to information, for example, developing effective, accountable institutions. And maybe you take some of that 9 votes back, and maybe you do a 7 and 7 and things like that. So on average, people would vote for like 5 or more teams. So as opposed to the battle days of one person, one vote, where half people will feel that they have lost after we announce the top 20. This time, then using quadratic voting, we've been doing this for 2 years now. Pretty much everybody feel they have won because they saw the synergy. They supported more than 5 projects, at least one of which will probably make to the top 20 or top 24. And that will enable people to understand more deeply about issues, supporting issues that do not have an instant gratification feel, such as human rights. So that's my answer. And you can learn more at presidentialhackathon.taiwan.gov.tw. Thank
you so much. I think this is a great question to conclude the event. I want to thank you thank you personally for attending the event. I think it has been a fantastic, an hour. As you said, it could have lasted much longer because I think everyone really has enjoyed this topic, and I think it's something that, because as citizens we would feel more involved with the government, is something that we were very fascinated about. Thank you for everyone that has joined us from Facebook. As I said, the event will be then live on YouTube, so everyone can rewatch it. And if you have any other questions or anything like that, you can check our social media. You can check Minister Tang's social media. And I hope that everyone has enjoyed this event. We certainly did. But again, thank you so much. It's been really a pleasure.
Thank you. And I wish you live long and prosper.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.